Okay, this third video for Module 5 gets onto the Python side instead of the first two videos. The first one I really wanted to try to set it up so that you could explore getting into just adding in SQLite and using it to connect to the SQLite database or the SQLite manager so that you have an environment to directly interface with the database. But of course, for data analytics, we are looking at coming into the Python environment and interfacing or interacting with the database. Okay, I don't want to make it too long. My tendency is, of course, to sort of start everything from scratch and then build it up, and it makes my videos very long. So instead, I'm going to do some copy paste, and that way, hopefully, reduce the amount of time on these videos. But connecting to a database and querying it, we need to use a library or package. It's a SQLite 3, by the way. If you're using SQL Server or Oracle, there are other packages that have been created that you can import and connect to SQL Server, Oracle, or any other database. The other issue that I want you to think about is and I posed it in the reflection question. I think at least from what I've explored so far of data analytics, a lot of the data repository, it's either a CSV file or a text file, or even if a database is used, the database processing power or capability is not being used, and databases have been over the past 20 years or so, they've really optimized the querying, the processing of queries, the performance. So it might be worth exploring some of the querying and processing being done on the database versus all of the processing, the querying being done on, for example, the data frame object. So that's one of the issues. And of course, the other is if you make changes and you want to store it, you can do it using a database much more conveniently. Maybe I should have added something onto that, the insert, the deletes. Maybe I'll add another video later on where you can actually see how data can be sent from the Python environment into the database. It's pretty much a simple insert statement or an update statement or a delete statement that you would call from the Python environment. Anyways, to start off, you have to establish a connection to the database, and this particular method that helps connect is in the SQLite 3 package or library. So you'll have to do this, and you have to make sure that you are creating this notebook in the same directory as where your database is located. So I'm creating this notebook in the same directory as where I have my salary comparison SQLite database file. Okay, so if I went ahead and made this, it has now connected. And once I've connected, I can start writing queries. So, but of course, if I want to display it or read it into a data frame, I have to use the pandas library. So basically, these three statements, I have to import pandas. Okay, And after I import pandas, the other two statements that you see here, SQL, I'm basically setting up a variable, a very simple select statement here. So it's a string that is held, so select all from skill is a string that's held in a variable called SQL. And then what I'm doing is I'm basically doing a read statement and reading it into a data frame. Okay, so pretty much like read CSV or read text, this is a read SQL query, and you need to pass it the SQL statement and the connection object. Okay, so we need these two parameters. And once we have read it in, we can then look at the do a head, apply the head method on the data frame, and then if I run this, I can try to, it gives me the table, the skill. Essentially it's all of the rows in the skill table. Okay, so this is what I want to make clear, that you have to establish a connection. By the way, regardless of what environment you're working in, whether you're creating a web application or an iOS, Android, this is pretty much the pattern. Establishing a connection to a database, you have to have a connection object, and then you'll have a SQL statement or some variation of it. Like there are things called stored procedures and so on, but you have to have some means of querying the database, and then you run you connect to the database, run the query, get back the data set into the environment. In this case, it is the Python environment. It obviously could be an R or it could be a Java environment or Microsoft's .NET. Whatever be it, it's the same pattern. And once you are inside of this environment where you've read it in from the database, you can then manipulate it. Okay, so that's the basics of connecting to and reading from a database. Let's see, I don't want to go through all of this. I just gave a set of examples here. These are the simple examples. The more complex queries, the main thing I wanted to make you aware of, there are a couple of them. One is this query here is the one that we looked at in SQLite. So if I connect to the SQLite database, okay, so you can see it's in the same directory. I'll open up salary comparison.sqlite. You can see the three tables here, and we had run a query that had connected all of them. I have a text file. Let me open up that text file, which I have posted on eCampus. So this is the text file. I think I called it salary comparison SQL script. So if you go right to the bottom of it, there is this select statement that spans the three tables. If I take that and run it here, okay, so drag this down so you can see the entire query. So select statement, these four columns from the three tables which are joined using their foreign key connections. So if I run this, it comes back with essentially connecting the three tables, giving the skill, location name, and the salary amount for each of the salary years. Now, basically, I want to run the same query in the Python environment, run it and retrieve it into a data frame. Now, I don't want to write this query as one single line. It would basically scroll well off the page. So to make it more readable, you can see I have this backslash. So I use the space backslash, and then I can then go on to the next line, and it would the Python would consider it as being part of the same statement, but just making it more readable. So if I copy this into where I'm running my queries, if I go in here, so this becomes my SQL statement, and obviously now I'm going to use my data frame. So I'm going to use this SQL statement, and again providing the same connection object, but obviously the SQL variable is now holding this more complex query. And by now you must have noticed that you can use either double quotes or single quotes for a string. Python accepts both, it doesn't complain. And then I provide the read SQL query method, the SQL statement, as well as the connection object, and then I'll run this so that you can see the top queries, okay, the top results, 5 results of this query. Okay, so this is, as I said, a little more complex version. You can, so I'll close this out so that it doesn't stay there, and now I can, if I want to, you can see I can make it an even more complex query with, like, you want to make it into, in this case it's a function, a sort of a standalone function that doesn't belong to a class. If it belongs to a class, we refer to it as a method. So we are defining a function here which is connecting, has the SQL statement, but also it takes 2 parameters, so skill name and location name. If you make it optional, then so one of the issues that I wanted you to be aware of is if you do this, where location ID is equal to location ID. So basically, if you say it is equal to itself, there is no restriction. Okay, and the reason I put this here is because I wanted to add these conditions on the where clause. So think about it. How would I add the where clause if only one of these? So I need to add this in if the user provides a skill name or a location name value. So I wanted to establish the where statement, and this, by having a column equated to itself, it means that there is no restriction. And once the where clause is added in, well, this is there as a part of the SQL, then I can use, well, this adds could come in. Otherwise, if I just bring in an and, then obviously it will break on syntax. So that's the reason I have this somewhat strange looking statement, a column being equated to itself, so that there is no, it doesn't restrict, but helps add in the where clause. Okay, so this obviously brings in the parameters here, and so this is one way of doing the search. And obviously you could apply the, you could have just read the entire data frame and then applied the where condition on the data frame instead of applying it on the SQL. So that's, again, as I said, one of the issues that I wanted you to think about. Where would it be more efficient, effective, cleaner to do the querying? Is it on the SQL statement so that when it goes to the database, the amount of data it's bringing back is going to be more limited? Or would you rather bring a larger data set back into Python and then do the processing on the data frame? So these are some things to think about. Okay. And of course, when you're having multiple parameters which have optional values, as I try to test it for different scenarios where both the parameters don't have values, one of them has values, and then both having values. Okay. And the last thing that I wanted to sort of quickly discuss, and comes back to what I'd hoped, again, with a lot of data analysis programs, whether it be R or Python, I noticed that there were a lot of sort of freestanding functions that seemed to be sort of unorganized, hard to find and use. For good object-oriented design, this should read we don't, not we do. I should obviously edit these a little more carefully. So we want, for good object-oriented design, we want our functions to be organized, easy to find and use. We want them to be reusable. So if they are sort of standalone, untethered functions, it's going to be very hard to find them. So we need to, that's why I'm very particular that we associate our methods with classes, so not just standalone functions, but methods of classes. And for most part, if you're reading large amounts of data from either a CSV, text, or database, they tend to become static methods rather than object methods, static methods belonging to the class. Okay, so basically, I've gone through a set of methods that I've discussed, and they use these. I've made them methods belonging to skill class or another for skill location. You want to distribute them into different classes. You don't want all of them crammed into one class. Again, it makes it like then one class becomes very heavy and the others are really not being used. So these are some concepts I want you to think about. And finally, there's one other issue that I wanted to discuss, which is with grouping. So let me just open that up. This is in the skill class. Find highest salary for each skill. So it's doing a group by operation and then applying a condition on each group. You're looking for whichever, by each skill, what is the maximum salary amount. Now, you could again use a data frame. In the last module 4, you saw that you could use group by and aggregate operations and methods on a data frame. So I would suggest exploring sort of using the data frame instead of SQL. And here in this, find the highest salary for specific skill for latest year. So here the way I looked at latest year was by adding a second condition, so the latest year being the maximum salary year, and also based on the skill that was provided. And you have to be a little careful whenever there's a parameter. You can see I've enclosed a single quote within the double quotes, so that way it includes the quotes as a part of the SQL. So this you have to be a little careful when constructing, sending in parameter values in a variable that is sent in to sort of be a part of the SQL statement. Obviously, this cannot be hard-coded. It depends on what the user enters. Now, there are other things called stored procedures, which are a little more sophisticated version of a SQL statement. It's that object actually resides on the database. That would make it a little easier to deal with parameters, but for that we would need to explore more on the database side, and I didn't want to get into that now. Okay, that's, I think, covers the three main aspects of the three videos. I think one is to just be able to set up SQLite Manager on Firefox and work with the SQLite database. Again, if you have questions, please email me so I could try to work with you on this. And then the second video basically discussed how to work with directly with this SQLite Manager, how you manage or create tables on SQLite. And the third video basically discusses how you connect from the Python environment to the database. Okay, again, if you have any questions, you can email me, and I will respond to them.